What is up, fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Dapper Snapper Gaming channel, and welcome back to How Do I Want to Do This? This is our series where we take a look at all playable options available to players in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, then we rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and either build them or fix them depending on how they rank. Now today we finish up our talks on the Hexblade Warlock, one of the fan favorites. All of the people seem to like this one, usually for just a 1 level dip, but today we're going to be putting a lot more emphasis on the full subclass itself, and I think we've got a lot of fun in store. Make sure though to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Also make sure to share the video with your friends and click the bell so you're notified when new videos are uploaded. Of course, the best way to support this channel is by becoming a member down below by clicking that join button. For only $2 a month you can become a bronze snapper and get access to all of my build guides as well as my subclass fixes that I have done all throughout this series, and then of course you get the new ones as well. You have access to those for as long as you want, and you can download those, use them at your table, use them for NPCs, whatever it happens to be that you want to use them for, they are there for you. And of course there are some awesome perks at the higher tiers as well, so make sure to check that out. So today I wanted to take on it's a fairly standard way of playing this, I guess. I've got a really weird way of doing it that I didn't want to fully commit to because I felt like it was a little too weird maybe to be my main build as it were. Maybe I'll end up doing it as a variety build in the future at some point. Just let me know. I'll talk about it in the honorable mentions as far as the weird build that I had thought about for this. But we're going to be going somewhat standard, I guess, on this, and I think you'll see what I mean. But we're in for a lot of fun and, to some, more importantly, a lot of damage. So let's go ahead and jump in. Before we get too far into it, of course, here are the rules for this series, and of course, that is what we will be abiding by. If your stats look different than mine, of course, make sure to make some changes according to what your table does. So starting off, we have our race, and I'm going with one that I haven't taken in a hot minute, and I think that it is really good. Now, mechanically speaking, there are really two options that I think are the absolute best for this build. I will mention the other one again in the honorable mentions at the end, but to me, it's really a 50-50 between that one and this one. So I wanted to go with the one that would be a little more flavorful and a little more fun and gives us some really nice utility. We're going with the half-elf this week, and I personally love the half-elf. I think it's an absolutely amazing race. I think mechanically it's really good. I think as far as the story that you can tell, there's a lot of really good stuff there. More importantly, though, it gives us a lot of really good stuff, and specifically we're going to be taking the Drow lineage, of course, as of the Skag book. Now I know obviously in 2024 they're getting rid of the all of the half races and that kind of thing, but assuming your table still uses the half races, then here you go. This is a great one for a lot of reasons. The main reason why we are going Drow on this though is that we get access to the Darkness spell. That's right. We're doing Darkness Devil Sight this week because I think it's a lot of fun, and we're gonna be mixing it up just a little bit and adding in our own little flavor here and there, and I think you all are going to enjoy that. What's also great is you get an amazing stat array bonus. You get a +2 and 2 +1s, which is fantastic, basically unheard of, which is absolutely great, and you get a bunch of other really great stuff that are, of course, the elf classics, and you really can't turn those down. So really fantastic for us. For our stats, of course, we're using the modified standard array you saw earlier, and of course just put your stats in the same order as mine if they look different. So our highest stat is going to go into charisma, second highest in constitution, third in dex. Besides that, it's really up to you. The other three or whatever. Wisdom, I typically want to be a little bit higher just because wisdom saving throws are a thing and they come up a decent amount. And then strength and intelligence, whatever, we'll just dump both of those. I don't really care. For our equipment, we're going to grab some medium armor this time because we are going to get that proficiency as a Hexblade Warlock, which is great. And so we can take the best thing that is available to us right now. Probably scale mail if you can get that. If you're allowed to get something better at start, then by all means go for it. But scale mail is most likely going to be the most readily available thing for you, so go with that, and then of course upgrade later as you can afford it. For right now, we're going to take a quarterstaff as our weapon, although that will be changing very soon. But for right now, I think that's going to be our best option. And then if you want to take a shield for now, you can. There is the option for that. I don't know that I would focus too hard on it, because once we get to once we get a little bit deeper into this, we're not going to really use it anymore. So it's really just an early level survival thing if you want it, but it's really either way. So let's go ahead and start taking some levels. Then at level 1, we're going to start as a warlock, which is great. Again, I'm not starting or even taking any fighter levels during this week. I know that I get a lot of comments on that, but we're not starting or taking any fighter levels. I just don't think it's necessary on this build per se. I think that there's definitely potential for good stuff there if we want to, but it's not necessary by any means. But so at level 1, we get our Pact Magic, of course, which we'll talk about in a second, as well as Hexblade's Curse and Hex Warrior. Hex Warrior, of course, being a really big one, giving us that medium armor proficiency, more weapon proficiencies, all that fun stuff there. And of course, Hexblade's Curse gives us a way to deal damage and have better crits and that kind of thing. And we're going to be leveraging that quite a bit as we go. For the Pact Magic, of course, for cantrips, I'm going to grab things like Eldritch Blast, Booming Blade, because we're using a melee weapon. Things like that are going to be the staples. Besides that, pick your favorites. And then for first level spells, I'd grab things like Hex, Armor of Agathis. We also grab Shield and Wrathful Smite from our specific spells on the subclass side. At Warlock 2, we're going to get our first round of Eldritch Invocations, and I'm going to grab 2 that, well, one of them is important, the other one is going to kind of fall by the wayside here in just a second, and then we're going to get it back a little bit later. But we're going to go ahead and start with Eldritch Mind and Devil Sight. Now, Eldritch Mind is only going to be around for right now, and then we're going to drop it, and then we're going to pick it back up way later in the build. But it's really nice for maintaining concentration on, if we're using Hex right now, that's really good to be able to maintain that concentration. Or if for some reason you're using Wrathful Smite, because that is a concentration spell, a lot of people forget that the smites are concentration, just because typically you're going to be going bonus action into making the attack hits, and it goes away, right? So it doesn't really matter. However, if you miss with your attack, you're still concentrating on this until the next time you can make an attack, which may be the next turn after you've taken a hit. So that does all factor in there. So definitely think about that. And of course, Devil Sight is going to allow us to see in our own magical darkness, which is fantastic. Absolutely love that. At Warlock 3, we're going to get our Pact Boon, and surprising absolutely no one, we're taking Pact of the Blade. Now, Pact of the Blade is great because this now opens up our options when it comes to what type of weapon that we can use. And then we combo this with a swap from Eldritch Mind over to Improved Pact Weapon. Improved Pact Weapon is fantastic because now our weapon is magical, regardless of what we're using. It also opens up our ability to use different types of like bows and things. We're not going to be going into that, although there definitely is a viable way to make, I guess they call it the hex bow. You can definitely go that route, and there are some great ways to do that. So it's a thing. It's absolutely a thing. But for right now, I'm going to then drop my quarterstaff, and now I can use a two-handed weapon, which is fantastic. So I'm going to grab a two-handed weapon, a halberd or a pike or a glaive or whatever it happens to be that you want to use. That's a two-handed weapon. It can be heavy because we've lost that restriction, which is great. And so yeah, we're all set, which is fantastic for some awesome damage, and we're going to just compound upon that as we go. For second level spells, we of course get the basics, you know, Blur, Hold Person. Branding Smite is also another one that we can grab from the subclass list, and those are all some pretty solid options. One other one that could be interesting here is Cloud of Daggers. Now, Cloud of Daggers is typically one that I would leave on the bench because most of the time this is going to be a spell that is not that good, right? No enemy is going to run into the area that is included in this. However, there are a couple of ways that you can use this, and if it's in complete darkness and an enemy doesn't know it's there, then there's a possibility, right? And if you're using a grid, you technically don't have to lock spells to a grid. You can put it between 2 points, and that way you catch 2 parts of the grid, right? So there's a way to make all of that work. To me, the best way to do that is if you're using a bludgeoning weapon and using the Crusher feat, which we're not doing on this build, but I will mention what to do with the other build. The other build actually is great with this, but we're not gonna be going that route. But it is an option if you wanted to set that up in your darkness and see if somebody will run into it, but overall, it's not the most reliable thing, so take it or leave it on that. And Warlock 4, we're gonna get our first ASI or feat. Polearm Master, of course, is going to be what we grab. Polearm Master is great because it allows us greater opportunity for opportunity attacks, which is great. I absolutely love that. And it also allows us to make a bonus action attack with the butt end of our weapon, which is fantastic as well. Gives us something nice to use to do on our bonus action if, for whatever reason, we don't have something to do that turn. It gives us something to do, which is great. So next up at Warlock 5, we're going to get no features, but we do get an Eldritch Invocation as well as 3rd level spells. For the Invocation, I think surprising no one is going to be Thirsting Blade. Thirsting Blade makes way too much sense to grab here, and it's when extra attack would be coming online anyway, so we might as well go ahead and snag that now. Again, I don't see why we would wait any longer on that. For 3rd level spells, of course, your counter spells and your dispel magics are all are going to be very normal. Now, one that is interesting is Summon Fae. Now, Summon Fae is interesting because it actually, with the Trixie version, can actually make a very small area of magical darkness. Now, this magical darkness is tricky because the darkness spell and this magical darkness have slightly different wording, and so you've got to really talk to your DM about how this works as to making sure that your DM will rule that the Devil's Sight is going to be one of the only ways to see through it, right? That just Dark Vision isn't going to see through it. Again, the Darkness spell has some very specific wording that certain creatures, even with certain abilities, can't see in it. And then Devil's Sight gets around it, right? So just make sure that that applies here, and then that may be a great option for you, because then you don't need to cast the Darkness spell. You can use Hex, right? Have your buddy here use the Darkness, stay near you, and use the Darkness, and then you can cast Hex or cast whatever other concentration spell you want because you no longer have to concentrate on it. So that is an option. Definitely consider that, but talk to your DM to make sure that everything is clear on how he or she is going to rule that, because that does make a big difference. So at this level, I think that really is our core that I wanted to go for. I think that I've gotten everything I need out of these first few levels. And I mean, Accursed Spectre is what comes next at level 6. That feature is weird, and it comes out of nowhere, to be honest. I talked about it back earlier this week. If you haven't seen that, check that out, and I'll put that up in the iCard above for you. But yeah, Accursed Spectre is weird, and it doesn't really help us all that much. Like, it makes a little meat shield, but even so, it's not that great. And so to me, if I'm gonna multi-class, now's the time. And I think that it would be wise for us to do so in this case. Nothing too crazy, but I do think that it is time to multi-class and pick up some other stuff. So we're going to do that, and we're going with Sorcerer. Surprising, probably hardly anybody, but that's totally fine. Sorcerer here makes a lot of sense. Of course, it's more charisma stuff, and it gives us some better magic. It allows us to have actual spell slots instead of just the short rest ones, which is fine. And of course, we can convert spell slots back and forth with our Font of Magic once we get that at Sorcerer 2. So there's a lot of good stuff here, and I think we can make that work. So at Sorcerer 1, we of course get spellcasting, and then we get to choose our subclass. Very fitting in the theme, we're going with the Darkness. And of course, I've talked about this on the channel. I'll put it up in the iCard above if you have any questions about how this subclass works and what I think about it all the way through. But yeah, Eyes of the Dark is very cool here. Now, what's great about this is that in addition to the better dark vision, we also get access to the Darkness spell through this on our spell list once we reach Sorcerer 3, which we are going to get to. This means that we can now cast it with our regular spell slots, or we can use our sorcery points, which is pretty cool if we're not using them for something else. I think that's really important to be able to have those flexible options. Obviously, we can cast it once as a drow, but this adds it to our spell list to be able to be cast normally, which is great, and that's going to really open up our options, and I think that's incredibly important. Strength of the Grave is also nice, but we're not going to be taking enough sorcerer levels here to make this all that powerful, so I wouldn't really rely on it too much. For cantrips, of course, we're going to grab things like Lightning Lure, Mind Sliver, anything here that you like that is not going to be on the Warlock list, I would at least consider. And then for first level spells, again, things like Absorb Elements and things like Silvery Barbs, those kind of reaction spells that you can cast as long as they are with your normal spell slots and probably not so much the Warlock ones. For Sorcerer 2, of course, Font of Magic, like we said earlier, this is going to allow us to convert our spell slots into sorcery points and vice versa. And we're going to use this an okay amount, at least for now. We don't really use the sorcery points for anything until we get to Sorcerer 3, where we get meta magic. So at this point, meta magic is really important because now we have access to Quicken Spell. Quicken Spell is a big deal, right? Quicken Spell is huge because this allows us to quicken things like the Booming Blade if we want to go for that. Now, we already have our Thirsting Blade, which allows us to attack twice. So we don't necessarily have to quicken it if we don't want to. However, if you want to lock down 2 enemies that are in your bubble, right, and make sure that they can't leave, first of all, they can't leave. They also are stuck in darkness with you, which is really cool. And now they just can't, they're just stuck, right? They can't see anything, so they're just attacking blind, so they have disadvantage on attacks against you. You have advantage on attacks against them. They can't leave without taking a bunch of damage. They're having a bad time, right? They're all having a bad time. And this is a great way to put you in a really advantageous position. Now, one thing I wanted to mention, I wanted to mention this earlier in the video actually, but the one cool way to do the darkness strat, because ultimately a lot of people have an issue with doing the darkness kind of strats just because it is very disruptive to combat, right? If you can't see in the magical darkness, you're going to be really mad when your buddy is out here making this massive darkness bubble or whatever, and now you can't see. You can't see through it, so you can't see across to the other side. And if there's this massive circle of darkness, you might be in a bad position too, right? So one thing I would talk to your DM about is whether or not you're allowed to do this, and I would personally allow this at my table, but what a lot of people are doing is you get a lantern, right? And this is not an original idea that I came up with. This is something that I've seen. But you get a lantern, and instead of having a candle or whatever you want in the middle, you put some other item in there. Some people will use a coin, some people will use something else, and that's what you cast darkness on, right? Now, lanterns have shutters, right? And so you can close the lantern, or some lanterns even will let you open one direction of it, right? And so you can have directional darkness, which could be cool. So yeah, talk to your DM about that, but I don't see why that couldn't be allowed. And basically, instead of light coming out of it, it's darkness, which is really cool. So you have a darkness lantern. Definitely talk to your DM about that, but I don't see why most DMs wouldn't allow that, but it is what it is. So getting back to things, I would also grab Extended Spell here. Extended Spell I probably won't use all that much. Quickened is going to be my main go-to, but Extended Spell is there if for some reason we need to extend darkness. It's already, what, 10 minutes, so I don't think we will need it all that much, but if for some reason you think you need 20 minutes of it, it's there if you need it. So it is what it is. For second level spells, Misty Step is going to be our main one, and Web as a backup, possibly put that in your darkness maybe if you can, and really put your enemies in a really bad spot. Sorcerer 4, we get another ASI or feat, and yeah, we're going Great Weapon Master. Man, it's been forever since I have done a Polearm Master, Great Weapon Master build, but man, now's the time. And I don't see why we wouldn't do that. This is just going to be incredible. We have advantage on most of our melee attacks because we can see, the enemy cannot, and that just means that we can just go ahead and take that that -5 to hit and that +10 to damage on most hits, right? As long as the enemy doesn't have an AC of like 19, I think we're statistically better off just doing it. And so let's go for it, right? And we're gonna make this better as we go. So to me, this is kind of where the sorcerer train needs to stop. I think that we can go ahead and go back to Warlock from here. If you wanted to take one more level, I could understand that to get 3rd level spells. But to me, I think it's better to just go ahead and jump back and call it a day right there. So we'll go ahead and go back to Warlock 6 and grab a Cursed Spectre, like what I said earlier. Again, this is like it's a pack mule, it's a meat shield, it's right. I don't think it's the best feature out there, and it's kind of out of left field to me, but Oh well, it's there if you want it. Warlock 7, we get no features, but we do get an Eldritch Invocation and some new spells. This is where I would go back and pick up Eldritch Mind again. You could also grab Eldritch Smite here if you wanted to do that. Both of those options are completely valid to me. But yeah, I would grab one or the other there. For 4th level spells, it's kind of pick your favorites here. Staggering Smite makes sense. Again, grabbing these spells that normally would be super late in the Paladin list are now coming online a lot earlier, at least if we had gone purely in Warlock. But still, really, really good stuff there. For Warlock 8, we get another ASI or feat, and you better believe we are now grabbing Elven Accuracy. Elven Accuracy is fantastic, and it has been long overdue, but it's okay. You could take this really early, to be honest. You could take this much earlier if you wanted to, but I wanted to go ahead and get my damage up, and then now, not only have we maxed out our Charisma by doing this, we also now are hitting so much more often, because if the enemy has been cursed with our Hexblade's Curse, we now are rolling 3 d20s, and we crit on a 19 or 20. That's insane. That's ridiculous. Your chances of critting are absolutely stupid, and your chances to hit are going to be off the charts, right? So we're always going to be taking that Great Weapon Master every single time, pretty much at this point. You might as well. You're going to be hitting so often. You might as well just go ahead and take it. I don't see why you wouldn't do that, but whatever. Yeah, but we're attacking with Charisma. We're using Charisma for everything. We might as well go ahead and take that +1 bump there and call it done. And yeah, I think that's really, really great there. So Warlock 9, we get no features, but we get another Eldritch Invocation. Again, I would take Eldritch Mind if you didn't take that earlier, or Eldritch Smite, whichever one you did not take a few levels earlier. And for 5th level spells, Banishing Smite's really the only one that I'm worried about, because that one's really cool. I like that one a lot. Warlock 10, we get Armor of Hexes, which is a nice little defensive feature. Basically gives us a 50-50 shot to be missed with an attack, which is really good, actually. That's awesome. It's a nice reaction. We don't have other great ways of using our reaction outside of opportunity attacks. So if we're not going to be using an opportunity attack this time around, might as well use this and just probably not get hit, which is really cool. For Warlock 11, we get our first round of Mystic Arcanum, and this one's split, right? Every week I have taken Mass Suggestion because it's really good. However, if you've got a buddy who is helping you with the darkness spell, then I would actually take Summon Fiend here. Summon Fiend is interesting because you can cast this and summon a devil, and devils have Devil Sight, right? They have Devil's Sight. It's in the name, right? So this means that you now have 2 guys going wild in the darkness with advantage, and everybody else has disadvantage. That could be cool, right? It does require concentration, so does darkness, so you have to have a buddy who's helping you out with the darkness spell, but could be interesting. So if you don't have a friend who's doing that for you, it's okay, don't worry about it. Then you can just take something like Mass Suggestion. But if you've got a buddy helping you with darkness, that could be an option, so definitely consider that. At Warlock 12, we get another ASI or feat. I would probably take the tough feat here, or you could do a +2 to your Constitution. I think either one of those would work just fine here. And then I'm going to grab Thirsting Blade. Thirsting Blade is really cool because this allows us to possibly heal up a little bit, and who doesn't want that, right? That's always going to be a good one. Warlock 13, we get our 7th level spell for Mystic Arcanum. Honestly, none of them really fit the theme all that well, so it's really just pick your favorite, whichever one you think is best. And then Warlock 14, we get Master of Hexes, which is great. This just makes our Hexblade's Curse a little bit better, a little more reliable. If we are mowing down enemies, we can start transferring it around, which is really cool. We're still restricted to the 1 minute, which is tough. I wish that it extended that a little bit more, but it is what it is. But either way, now we can kind of bounce it around if we start taking people out, which is really cool. We just don't get to do the heal after every time. It's only the first time. So then Warlock 15, we are now level 19 overall, and we get another round of Mystic Arcanum for 8th level. I would grab things like Dominate Monster. Dominate Monster makes a lot of sense here, as well as an Eldritch Invocation, and Relentless Hex makes a lot of sense here. Again, Relentless Hex goes with either the Hex spell or our Hexblade's Curse. Either way is fine, and this just gives us a bonus to that. And then for level 20, we can go with Eldritch Adept in order to grab Maddening Hex and have that combination ready and online for level 20. So that's our build. Let me know what you think down below. Now, I'm starting my honorable mentions in a weird spot because I don't normally do this, but instead of starting with just other options of multi-classing or other different types of races and that kind of thing, I'm gonna actually suggest another play style. I'm going to suggest two-weapon fighting, and I know that that's weird. Two-weapon fighting is generally bad, and I agree, it's generally not as good as going with a big single weapon. And I don't think that your weapon numbers are going to be as high as going with what we've built here today. However, it's a lot of fun to do it with this. So what you do basically is you have two weapons. Both of them are going to be bludgeoning weapons, so it can be a club or it can be a warhammer or whatever it is that you want to do. You're dual wielding them, right? One of them is going to be a pact weapon and one of them is going to be a hex weapon. Because you can do that. Just because one is a pact weapon doesn't mean that it has to be your hex weapon. They can be separate, right? And that is cool. You have to just keep track of what's doing what, but there's a lot of really cool benefits to doing it that way. And that is where I would have quickened with Crusher, and I would also have the Cloud of Daggers there, because then you can knock somebody into the Cloud of Daggers, they take damage immediately, then they take it again when they start the turn there, which is really cool. So you can really bounce people around there, and it can work in the darkness as well, but I personally would just not do darkness in that case. But yeah, so you can quicken Cloud of Daggers, smack somebody into it, they take it when they enter it, they take it when they start the turn, and so you can kind of bounce people around if you want, and that's really cool. So definitely consider doing that. I think that that's a really fun option. So yeah, let me know in the comments down below. And of course, you know, I mentioned the hex bow. Of course, we can use weapons that are not melee with this. We lose out on a few features of it, but I mean, there's still a really cool way to do this with like a hand crossbow. I think that there's a lot of really cool ways that you can do this with Crossbow Expert, as well as how all this works with improved pact weapon. There's a lot here, so definitely consider that. Okay, so for normal honorable mentions, for other race options, the number one is going to be the Tiefling. The Tiefling is really cool. It gives you a really flavorful version of the Hexblade, and gives you a lot of really cool options. It also gives you the Darkness spell if you take the right sub-race, which is great. Now, the other option, of course, was Custom Lineage, and Custom Lineage, to me, mechanically, is going to be the second best option over the Half-Elf Drow. This is going to, of course, let us get all of those feats one slot earlier, which is really good because we needed a lot of feats in this case, and it took us a long time to get those online. This would help that out quite a bit. For other feats that I didn't get to take, even though I wanted to, Warcaster, of course, we had to leave that one behind, which is a little bit tough. That would have allowed us to Booming Blade as our reaction on opportunity attacks, but honestly, it's not a huge deal, I guess. We also have things like Metamagic Adept, which is cool, just to give us some extra sorcery points, which could be really good. We don't have all that many, so it could be really nice if we need them. For other multi-classing options, I would actually consider the Fighter here. Again, I said I didn't take any, but that doesn't mean it's not a good option. The Cavalier Fighter is a really cool one here, of course, for that soft taunt kind of thing. I think that's really, really strong, and I like that a lot. Also the Swashbuckler Rogue for the ability to get in and out. Of course, we would have to use a rapier most likely in that case in order to make it a finesse weapon, which is cool, but still really, really cool option there. And of course, the ever popular Paladin, which it's not super important which one you take. Of course, Vengeance is always good, Conquest is always good, but those are some really good options, and it would always be powerful no matter what you do. So that is our build for today. I hope you all enjoyed that. Next week, I believe we get to the penultimate Warlock, which is cool, and then we are moving on to Wizard, and then we are done with all of the 2014 subclasses. Then we get to move on to 2024 stuff, which is really cool. I hate being behind the curve on it, but I put a poll out and people said, keep going with 2014, finish it all up, and then move on to 2024. I know it's already almost October, but there are so many Wizards that I think it's going to get me to the end of the year on just 2014 stuff, and then we get to 2024 stuff starting in 2025, which, you know, 3 months late, but I mean, have you seen the list of Wizard subclasses? They are ridiculous. It's ridiculously long, and so yeah, just gotta work through it 1 week at a time. We will get there. But anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. We will see you next week for some more Warlock talk, and until then, stay safe out there, stay healthy. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.